You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Well, hello again, everyone. This is Doug Thorpe, and this is another episode of Leadership Powered by Common Sense. I'm kind of on a roll of late, I guess. I talk a lot about culture creation and the way leadership carries such a huge burden and a pivotal role in whether or not a company has a productive culture, among many other things. And my guest today is someone who I think can help us, on one hand, wrap it all together, and on the other hand, peel it apart and untangle it and talk about it. So his name is Jeff Stonebridge. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Doug, it's great to be here. And I love the podcast title, Powered by Common Sense. Common knowing does not always equal common doing. And so I love that. I love that you're focused on that. That's great. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Well, as my frequent listeners know, if I have a mantra, it is the fact that we live in a very complex and ever becoming more complex world. And one of the biggest challenges of leadership, in my opinion, is the ability to create clarity. Simple, hey gang, here's how we're going to go from point A to point B. And if a leader can't do that, there's going to be challenges. And so for all of you that have moved into leadership roles or established yourself as leaders, never forget that. Clarity is such a huge part of being able to really tell people what the next right thing might be about. And sometimes it needs to be in just real simple, common sense terms.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So, it's interesting. I'm glad you said that because I was on a podcast a couple of days ago, and then I had someone here in my office where we talked about it. It never ceases to amaze me the number of CEOs and other leaders in organizations who assume that they've been clear, yet the associates throughout the organization say, I don't know where we're going. I don't know what we're trying to do here, right? And so the assumption of clarity does not equal clarity, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I love it. And that is an exclamation point there. And you are spot on. Too often I coach those leaders and they express the frustration. My people don't get it. My people don't get it. They don't seem to understand what I'm telling them. And my first question is, how often do you tell them? Well, we had it at the big meeting. We had it in January. We talked about it. No, dude, you missed. All right. That's your problem.
That's right. That's right. For sure. No, you tell. One of the first things I learned in one of the first instructor trainings that I ever took, I think it was a CPR instructor. It says, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then you tell them, and then you tell them what you told them.
Yeah.
And so we have to do that. I mean, we have to figure out short ways. And this was the guidance I was giving, to one of the CEOs I was coaching the other day. We have to give them short kind of references to use so that they refer to them frequently. In this particular organization, he was talking about, we've done a really good job of clearing the trees, cutting down all the trees. He said, and I said, but what you haven't done is you hadn't stacked the cordwood. Yeah. And so maybe that phrase, stacking the cordwood, that's what you got to hit on that. We've cut the trees down. Now we got to stack the cordwood, and you tell them and you tell them and you tell them, basically meaning that we know where we are at the 50,000 foot view, but we've got to organize where we're going and make sure everybody understands it. We got to stack the cordwood.
Right. Well, and you raise a great point. In bigger organizations, often the big target is defined, and there's some degree of clarity on what that means, but you have to then start going through the ranks of management and leadership and distilling it down to unit-specific deployment or tasking that you can do. Yep. And, I come from a military background, and, all our military specialties, when you think about executing a battle plan, you've got all your resources and you start with, well, am I going to use infantry? Am I going to use tanks? Am I going to use artillery? Sure. And you start working through the blend of that. And when you designate which ones are going to be deployed, then each one of those unit commanders have to break it down into operating tactics and such. And it is a great analogy for bigger business. And all too often, I'll talk to leaders in the second, third, and fourth tiers of bigger companies, and I'll ask them, "What is your vision for your team?" And their general answers often is, "I'm waiting on instruction."
Yeah.
And and I'm saying, why don't you flip that script? Why don't you take what you do know and you create a plan, you create a vision, and you take it up to your boss and your boss's boss and say, "Hey guys, here's what I see, here's what I understand, here's what I think my group can do. Is that okay? Is that a marching order for me? Can I execute on this?" And in the better organizations, you'll get good positive alignment feedback from those leaders, and then you're ready to go. You got the mission, you got the gauntlet to pursue. But I think, in that regard, leadership needs to be proactive. You got to take the stand and say, "All right, you made me the head of this group. Now here's what I think we're going to go do."
Completely agree. I'd lots rather build my plan than to have someone build it for me.
Absolutely. Well, Jeff, I know we kind of dove straight in. I'd like to get a little bit of background from you to share with the group, with the audience here.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about your journey through your adulting and your business life, and what got you into what you do now.
Sure. And it sounds, if you were to read my bio or look at my resume, it sounds more like it was revolutionary, but it was really more evolutionary. I graduated high school from a small town in South Arkansas, 28 people in my graduating class, crammed a 4-year degree into 6 years at the university because it was just hard for me, and ended up getting formally trained in healthcare. So I was a paramedic, a respiratory therapist, worked 9 years on the helicopter team at Arkansas Children's Hospital, 6 of which I was a professor in the cardiopulmonary program at the University of Arkansas for medical sciences. So I taught pharmacology, cardiopulmonary anatomy and physiology, neonatal and pediatric intensive care. But I saw a need for our students who were graduating in all the healthcare specialties, going out into the far reaches of the state of Arkansas. This would be back in the early 90s. And they were becoming shift supervisors, department directors, hospital administrators. And in healthcare at that time, the person who was the most technically proficient was the person who was generally thrust into leadership roles most quickly. And as you know, Doug, many times technical proficiency and leadership do not equal one another.
Right.
And so I created a course for these graduating seniors to kind of equip them with some basic leadership skills, and fell in love with the study of leadership and its impact on organizations. So I ended up going to graduate school and getting a doctorate in leadership and organizational behavior, and studying the differences while I was an academic of top performers from average performers, and figuring out what the differences were, and but coming to terms with the fact that academic credentials, degree attainment, letters behind one's name, professional certifications, none of those correlate to success either as an individual contributor or as a leader. And ended up moving out of healthcare and worked for a publicly traded data analytics company called Axiom Corporation that was a global company at the time, and kind of replicated my research there. Ended up getting into mergers and acquisitions for them, lived in the UK for 18 months, did probably about 40 different acquisitions and mergers, oversaw the integration of those, where I really got attuned to the fact that one of the single greatest reasons that mergers and acquisitions fail is because of a cultural mismatch, which boils down to leadership. And on my 50th birthday, I retired, and I'm using air quotes here for people who are just listening to the podcast, not watching. I retired because I said I'd spent the first half of my life making a living. I wanted to spend the second half making a difference. And so I started an entrepreneurial support organization called The Conductor, where we get third-party sources of funding so that we can provide sponsored, if you will, or funded coaching, consulting, mentoring, training to entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, and small business leaders. And then have a billable consulting firm called Innovation Junkie as well, where we work with companies that don't qualify for that funded support to help them build paths to sustain strategic growth. And more times than not, that path to sustain strategic growth involves helping them examine their organizations around culture. And we've ultimately built a framework that I hope we'll get a chance to talk about today called the Culture of Excellence.
I would love to do that because that is number one. It's a hot topic on the short list of current business buzzwords. There is a lot being written and discussed about culture building, culture creation,
Sure.
culture development, culture change.
Yep.
And some of the more enlightened companies, and that's my word, not theirs, that I've worked with, the C-suite has said it's crystal clear that the younger generations coming into the workplace are not going to suffer the traditions and the legacies of how the businesses have worked before, say for the last 50 or 100 years. So there's a mandate to change the culture, change the mindset, and change things. And it always, in the cases I've had a privilege of working with, the challenge is breaking old habits with those that have risen up in the ranks to become the senior leaders, telling them what a new standard is or a new expectation may be, and then getting them to change their behaviors toward the people that work for them.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to name names, but there was one giant global brand that had gone through such a change about 5 years ago. And one of the senior executives who had been there coming up on 30 years was not suffering the change well and not embracing the direction that had been laid down, and continued to treat people the way they had been. And executive leadership said, "You're out,
For sure. Yeah.
You're eligible for your retirement. You're just going to take it a little bit early." And
yeah. It's interesting. I think we have to start by number one, back in the 80s, 90s, culture was talked about by the C-suite as something that the HR organization did, right? And so it was kind of considered fluff. And so, yeah, it's stuff we talk about at orientation, but it really doesn't affect us on the day to day. And, I think we have to look, first of all, understand the importance of culture. It's been positive, strong cultures have been directly correlated to increased revenue growth to the tune of about 4 times, increased profitability, increased employee engagement. And so employee engagement means or employee disengagement means that someone quits and leaves, or quits and stays rather. Turnovers when they quit and leave, disengagements when they quit and stay, right? It's been positively correlated with customer satisfaction. It's been, negative cultures have been directly correlated to the opposite of those things, plus more mistakes, more turnover, more absenteeism, higher healthcare costs, et cetera. So there are direct bottom line results on organizations from culture. And so then that begins to beg the question, well, what is culture? And when I ask people that, they say, well, we have our core values on the wall. And I say, okay, well, that's a part of culture, but it's not everything, right? We have this thing called the espoused culture, which is the culture that we say we have. Core values are part of that espoused culture many times. Then we have the culture in use, or the culture in action. That's the culture that really exists. And when you begin to define that, it's really everything. It's the degree to which we adhere to our core values. It's the degree to which we hold people accountable to our core values. In other words, are we willing to fire top performers, top rainmakers who blatantly defy and violate the core values? That's part of our culture. It's the unwritten rules, norms, and patterns of behavior that we have. It's how we approach problem solving or don't approach problem solving. It's how we make decisions or how indecisive we are. It's the feeling I get when I'm getting ready for work on a Sunday night. And it's the feeling I get when I'm getting in my car on a Friday afternoon to drive home. All of those things equate to culture. And so I believe that's why culture change initiatives struggle so much is because people don't really take a holistic view of what exactly is culture and what do we actually need to change.
I agree. And you said it well. One of the themes that I've picked up on and used quite a bit in my own work to help others with their companies is the notion of culture ultimately boils down to how we do everything.
That's right.
Everything. And yes, I love what you said. You can have the words on the wall, and hopefully those become a good definition. And I'll give you a simple common sense example of what I'm talking about. I was talking to a business owner over in Florida last year, met him for the first time, was talking to him about his business. And he was second generation owner of the company. It's a commercial constructor. He had grown the business. His dad gave him a business that was topsiding revenue about 10 million a year. He had grown it to 40 million. And so he had a pretty big deal going on. And I asked him, I said, talk to me about your culture. How would you describe your culture and your values? And he said, oh, it's one phrase. I said, what's that? And he said, do the right thing. And I laughed at him. I said, yeah, that's, I can see that in the gold letters in the headquarters, all right. I said, but seriously, how does that really work? And he laughed back at me and he said, that's what everybody does when I tell them that. They laugh at me. And he said, I'll tell you how it works out. He said, I preach to my people and I support them when they do it. I'll give you an example. Classic trick in construction is you've got this big multi-million-dollar project. You make a goof. You lay an electrical line the wrong way, or you cut a ditch the wrong direction, and now you got to go fix it and fill it. It costs you money to go do that. Mm-hmm. So you take that cost and you bury it somewhere else in the project so that you're whole when it's over. He said, guess what? We don't do that.
Yeah.
He said, we account for it, we track it, but we share it with our customers. Mm. And we do the right thing to fix it, whatever it costs us. And we show that to our customers, and we show them that there are no adjustments to any other line item. There are no other changes coming down the pike. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about everything else in the project, standalone as is, being what it is. And he said, you know what that affords me? He said, I get to bid high.
Yeah.
He said, I'm not the cheapest bidder on any project I ever do. He said, I'm not necessarily the top of the stack, but I bid high. Mm-hmm. And people appreciate that that's what they're going to get with me. So they take my bid.
Well, let me share a converse to that. I was having a conversation with a CEO one time that I've been working with the organization for a period of time. This was a few years ago. And I said, hey, I'd like to share with you some observations that I've made about the culture. To which he responded, culture? We don't have a culture. People do work and I pay them money. That's our culture.
Yeah.
So,
well,
you have it.
My thought about that is to not to get off on chasing a rabbit here, but I'm wondering if he was a good guy to work for.
It's real interesting. It depends on the day and it depends on the person. He's got a huge heart. But that heart doesn't come through very, very often. It comes through at critical moments, but not on a day-to-day basis. I mean, he's a tough cookie. Well, we've observed a number of organizations. So a lot of what we do with organizations is we come in, they bring us in to help them really figure out how to create sustained strategic growth in the organization. Oftentimes that starts with some innovation, maybe an innovation exercise or what we call an innovation sprint to help them really challenge the status quo. But as we've worked with these organizations to help them implement our strategic growth system, we've been able to observe about 6 elements that we routinely see that contribute to what we call this culture of excellence. The organizations that are able to create sustained strategic growth have a culture of excellence that they've not only cultivated, but they reinforce, they talk about regularly. And there are about 6 elements to that. If we get a chance, I'd love to talk about each of those 6 elements, because I think just what I've heard you say so far, I think you're going to find some of that resonates with you.
Yeah, let's do. Why don't you run through them real fast? Then we'll double back and dig a little deeper.
Sure. The first one is strong leadership. I mean, organizations that cultivate a culture of excellence have strong leaders who are committed to the direction, the vision, the mission of the organization. They're committed to the espoused culture. They not only live out the espoused culture, but they talk about it regularly, and they praise people for embodying the culture. They coach people who don't embody the culture, and they're willing to fire people who blatantly defy the culture. So that's kind of strong leadership. The second one you've already talked about, which is clarity and focus. They know who they are as an organization, they know where they're going, and they know how they're going to get there. And not only that, they ensure that every unit throughout the organization understands how they contribute, and every individual understands how they contribute to the direction of the company as well. They have engaged and committed teammates. Engaged and committed teammates mean that they know how they contribute, and they come to work every day seeking to move the organization forward by fulfilling their responsibilities that contribute to that. They create a culture of what I call empowered communication, which is the fourth element. The word empower literally means to make someone stronger and more confident in dealing with the circumstances they're facing. So even when they have to have a tough conversation, and oh, by the way, tough conversations happen in cultures of excellence, just like they happen in any other culture, but they don't leave it with just a tough conversation. They end that conversation by trying to make the person with whom they're having that conversation stronger and more confident at moving forward from there. They have 100% accountability. 100% accountability basically means their deeds match their words and their words match their deeds. Individuals can't be 100% accountable if the C-suite and all levels of leadership aren't going to be 100% accountable. I used to think of accountability and leadership as it relates to accountability as an act of assertion, where I have to assert myself to hold my people accountable. And in my gray-headed years, as you can see, the gray hair here and the gray hair here, I've come to learn that it's more of an act of submission. As if I submit myself to being held accountable, it's more likely that my people are going to submit themselves to being held accountable, and that proliferates the organization. Here's what 100% accountability looks like. If I owe you something, at a report or a sales pitch or something at noon on Thursday, and then on Monday, something happens with a client that takes me out of pocket for 3 days, the very first moment that I see that I'm at risk of delivering what I said I'm going to deliver to you, I call you and say, Doug, I need to talk. I've been taken off track. Is Thursday at noon a drop dead deadline for you? And you may say, no, it's really not, because I've been taken off track as well, and Monday is going to be the first time I look at it. Problem solved. But you may say, actually, noon is absolute drop dead. It'd be better if I could get it at 11:30 because I've got a client meeting at 1 o'clock, to which I have to then start problem solving with you so that I can do what I said I'm going to do, versus waiting until noon Thursday and praying to God that you don't ask me about it.
Yeah.
So 100% accountability is kind of like integrity, both individually and organizationally. And then the last element, the sixth element of that culture of excellence, kind of follows the thinking of management guru Mike Tyson, who said everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And so organizations have to be adaptable and agile. They have to plan ahead. They have to anticipate potential detours. But if they get knocked down to the mat, they've got to be able to get back up and keep moving.
Yeah. I like that. So much packed in there. And so let's go back real quick. Let's give each one of these maybe a minute or two more. So start with number one again.
Mm-hmm. Strong leadership.
The, you alluded to this earlier. One of the traditions in business that I'd talk about is we take our best technician, our best performer, and we elevate them to team leader when there's an opening.
That's right.
And it's the way businesses of all kinds work. It's everywhere. It goes on and on. And I don't know if anybody's ever done a bona fide study on that, but my humble observation of it for 40 plus years in the game is that probably what you've got, you're 50-50 at best if you have that be a successful decision. Mm-hmm. And for the 50 that's not so good, you've got a person that all of a sudden feels very uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. The performance they once had probably wanes and goes down the tube. So you've just blown a hole in your production. And now you've got a person that is unclear and uncertain. And 9 times out of 10, that frontline supervisor who's there for the first time has no sense of where to go or who to talk to about how to do it right.
That's right.
Unless the company is very proactive in providing training and mentorship. And I give you a quick example. I've told this story a couple of times on this show, but I think it's worth repeating. I was commissioned a couple of years ago to lead a first-time manager's course at a large engineering company. Mm-hmm. And they're big enough, they had these waves of first-time promotions, and so they would send them all to this class. It was a 2.5-day class, big 6-inch binder of material to go through and understand what it meant to now be a manager at that company. I got through about the first hour, and then we took a break, and this line formed at the podium. And the first guy says to me, if this is what I got to do, I don't want to do it. I want to go back to being an engineer. Yeah. And I said, okay. And, I'm an outside contractor, so I'm sitting here going, why don't you stand over here? Let me take the next question. Let's see what we can do. Well, it turns out the whole line was that idea.
Yeah, yeah.
All of them had that same sentiment. So, when that light bulb goes off, it's a huge deal. But so the leadership thing, where I want to come back to is the point that leadership at all levels need continuing coaching, development, and training to be able to perform at whatever level they've risen to.
For sure. Absolutely. And I even say that, that the purpose of espousing a culture and the way that your espoused culture becomes your culture in use, and the way that the gap between the two gets shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, is you use that espoused culture to recruit people, select people, hire people, coach people, train people, promote people, and fire people, right? And so just as you said, the best performer becomes the team leader or the next first line leader. Same thing I saw in healthcare that started me on my journey. The greatest respiratory therapist became the most technically proficient one, became the team leader. And many times they failed. And so when I was working at the data analytics company, we actually created a career path. There were people that we wanted at the leadership table to weigh in on important company decisions. But for God's sake, we didn't want them leading people. We didn't want them having direct reporting responsibilities for people. So we created a career path called a technical executive, which was someone who was a knowledge expert, a subject matter expert, whom we wanted at the table to help shape the direction of the company, but we didn't give them leadership responsibilities. And we had to do that.
Yeah, very interesting. All right, so pillar number 2 in the model.
Clarity and focus. Making sure that they know who they are as an organization, where they're going, how they're going to get there, and making sure that every level of leadership understands that their units are aligned with that, and they have their own unit missions relative to that, and that the individual employees understand how their individual contribution aligns with that as well.
Well, I'm a big fan of that. And as all my clients will attest, I have another mantra that I borrowed from the sales world. There's a phrase in sales training that says, a confused mind says no.
Yeah. And I have a similar one that says a confused mind never buys.
Yeah. Same idea. Same
Exactly.
idea.
That's right.
And that's exactly the principle in it. And when I was reminded about that, I said to myself, that's the leadership clarity point. When your people are confused about where they need to go, if a person is on your team that is a reasonably good fit, meaning they are the right person in the right seat, you have to give them that clarity because they fundamentally want to do good work. Nobody really wakes up and says, I'm going to go suck at work today.
That's right.
But if you haven't given them that clarity, they're not going to do the wrong thing because that's counterintuitive to them, but they're probably going to do nothing because they don't want to do the wrong thing.
Yeah, that's right. No, you're exactly right. Jack Welch one time said that if you've got someone who's struggling to succeed, but they're a cultural fit for the organization, you probably just have the wrong combination of job responsibilities, role requirements, or maybe a lack of clarity on those. And so fix that and you'll have a great performer. Yeah. Now, by the converse, he said, if you have someone who's a great performer, maybe they're a rainmaker bringing in all kinds of revenue from a sales perspective, but they blatantly defy the core values or the culture of the organization, you're not going to fix that. You got to move them on down the road.
Right. Well, and that touches on the old principle, you can hire for skills, but you better be hiring for behavior because skills can always be trained, but you can't necessarily adjust behavior.
That's right. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. Point number 3.
Point number 3 was engaged and committed teammates. So understanding what motivates people, understanding what engagement means. So as I said, disengagement is not, they don't quit and leave the organization, they quit and stay, which is a very costly proposition. They say that employee engagement costs somewhere between 35 and 50% over and above the fully loaded annual salary of an employee if they're disengaged. And so making sure that they understand the mission of the organization, understand the alignment of their unit to that mission, and they understand the alignment of their role to that unit's responsibilities. And they have an environment where they can come and share their ideas and they enjoy the people they work with and are able to contribute and reap the benefits from that.
Related to that is a concept that I talk about in a lot of my material is the reality that every person, you and I have it, every person that might work for us has it. There's this notion of discretionary effort that I can show up for work every day and I can fulfill my job description. And that would be called a success by most standards. But there is a reality. I've got another gear that I can choose to kick into or not.
Right.
And that's where discretionary effort comes in. And studies have been done, and the highest performing teams inspire people to engage with that other gear on a more regular, not 100% necessarily, but on a more regular basis. And let me give you a small example of what that higher gear discretionary effort use can sound like. A team is operating, they're working along, and one of the teammates says to a coworker, man, I got a problem. My son has an event this afternoon at school, but I forgot about it. I didn't plan for it. I really hate to go ask the boss if I could leave. And the other coworker says, why don't you just go? I'll cover you. I got it. I'll take care of it. I'll get you. And then they say, why don't we go talk to the boss and tell them that's what we're doing, and that'll be okay. So it's not that the employee who's already balled up, feeling bad about it, goes to the boss, has to bare his soul, and then the boss has to take on a thing and go find somebody. It's solved. And it's because that other coworker was willing to invest that discretionary effort to say, I'll kick it in another gear for this afternoon and I'll cover for you. We'll get it done.
That's an engaged and committed teammate for sure.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
All right. Number 4.
Yep. Number 4 was empowering communication. This concept that to empower someone is to make them stronger and more confident in dealing with the circumstances they're facing. Cultures of excellence over and above have this concept of empowerment where the leaders in the organization truly seek to make people stronger and more confident. They do it in their work processes, they do it in their work environment, and they do it in their communications with each other. They may still have to have a tough conversation about how someone is not performing or how a unit is underperforming or what have you, but they don't just leave it at the tough conversation. They try to circle back around to have that empowering element to the conversation. So when they walk out of that conversation, they're thinking more about their behavior than they're thinking about the leader's behavior.
When we think about empowerment, that's sometimes a tripwire for leaders who have been in the seat a while, because they know from practical experience there's a process procedure that needs to be followed. If you're in a business that intense manufacturing or kind of environments, heavy machines, heavy equipment, something like that going on, they take the word literally and say, well, I don't want my people making discretionary judgments about where to set the dial. We prescribe where the dial needs to be set for this process to work right. So they get tripped up on the notion that empowering is somehow going to have people tinkering with all the settings.
No, I agree with you. And so I would then differentiate empowerment from autonomy, right? Autonomy is when you let them tinker with the settings. Empowerment is where they are empowered to behave within a set of guidelines or within a set of parameters or within a set of guardrails, right?
Yeah.
So that's right. A lot of people mistake autonomy and empowerment as synonymous, and they're really not.
I got it. Okay. Number 5.
Yep. Number 5 is 100% accountability. I shared as I was describing it in summary that it's kind of like integrity. When I ask people, what's the definition of an integrity? Generally, the response I get is when you do the right thing when other folks wouldn't know the difference. And that's a cute definition, and I like that, and it's kind of catchy. But when I was in the medical field, we used to talk about the integrity of the skin or the integrity of a bone. And it meant that it was intact. It was still one. It wasn't broken, right? If you think about to integrate something is to bring it together into a whole. To disintegrate something is to blow it apart into its fragments, right? So when we have integrity, that means that our words match our deeds match our words. It means that we are whole. And when we don't have integrity, we are broken. That's the natural design. So 100% accountability really is kind of synonymous with integrity.
I like it. And lastly, number 6.
Organizational agility. And that's about, it starts with the mental resilience of the people in the company, the mental toughness, the mental resilience, the grit that they have. It then talks about or describes this concept of an organizational grit or organizational agility and resilience, the ability to be knocked down 10 times and to get up 11. But even before you get knocked down, to try to make decisions quickly, to think about the future, to anticipate potential train wrecks, and to try to mitigate those. And then when you do ultimately fail to properly mitigate one, and you do get knocked down, you get back up and you dust yourself off, and you figure when a COVID hits, how do you handle that?
Yeah. Powerful stuff, Jeff. Thank you so much for doing this. And I feel like I could probably stay in this conversation for a long time, but we need to wrap it up and let our folks get back to their work in the day. But tell everybody the best way to get a hold of you if they're interested in learning more.
Sure. 3 different ways. One is LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, and it's Jeff Standridge, as in stand on a ridge. Number 1. Number 2, you can go to jeffstandridge.com. Or if you want to reach out to me directly, you can go to Jeff S at innovationjunkie.com.
Nice. Very good. Well, as always, folks, we're going to have that information in the show notes with all the live links to hop over there and get a hold of Jeff. And one last time, Jeff, thanks so much. Powerful, powerful message.
It's my pleasure, Doug. I appreciate you for having me, and keep doing the great work you're doing. I love leadership powered by common sense.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, and on that note, I want to remind everybody, if you are listening on your favorite streaming service, we do have a video version of this over on YouTube, channel by the same name, Leadership Powered by Common Sense. Hop over there, check out the archives. You can take a look at all the other material we've got there. I do want to invite you to give me some feedback, leave a comment, tell me about any ideas or suggestions you've got for future episodes or guests you may know about. And with that, we're going to sign off, say goodbye, go out there, make it a great day.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.